Hi everyone, welcome to Here We Are, Brattleboro's community talk show. I'm Wendy O'Connell, and this show is going to be a regular show aired on BCTV. We're going to be having folks from the community come on and have conversations to talk about what they're doing, what kinds of things they're interested in, what kinds of things that they're passionate about, what they do, what they do to have fun, and what they think about Brattleboro, how they got to Brattleboro. And so it's going to be a casual conversation with people that you've probably seen on the street for years and years and often wondered what they do. And so we're going to find out. A lot of the focus is going to be about connecting with each other, just knowing who we are, knowing what the community, who the community is made up of, and what kinds of things we're doing to keep this community alive and vibrant. So today we have Art Costa, who is a local artist. He's been here since the mid-90s. Welcome, Art. We're so glad you're able to be with us today.
Thank you. It's great to be chatting with you here.
Yep, yep. And Art also is going to be showing us a few things that he has tucked under the table here that we're going to bring up to show you. Art, I just want to give you a little bit of an intro here, even though they've already seen you. Art's a really innovative artist, and he takes some of the most ordinary objects and materials and makes extraordinary things, from baling wire to cardboard to paper to all kinds of recyclable things that have been scavenged or accrued in one of many different ways. And out of them, he makes these fantastical things, from masks to fantasy cars, which he'll talk a little bit about, sculpture assemblages, and all of his work is, it turns out to be really magical and intriguing. So we're really glad to talk to him today about where he got a lot of his inspiration and what he's doing. So Art, let's kind of jump in, and well, let's just jump in by the fact that you came from Central California, which is very far away.
It is, and very flat. I grew up on a Portuguese dairy farm up until I was about 16 years old. So you were mentioning baling wire, and I think some people around here can relate to that. My dad was the type who, he didn't have a lot of money, so I called it baling wire technology. He fixed things by using what was left over from the bales of hay, because back then it had wires, and would hold things together with that kind of thing. And you know, as a child watching this and joining in, I learned the skills of you know, repairing by the seat of your pants and saving all kinds of materials, and knowing that somewhere along the way you store it back somewhere, you're going to use it for some kind of repair. And as a kid, I used it for entertainment too, building toys and building tree houses out of you know, recycled cardboard, old boards, wiring them all together. Mm-hmm. You know, so it was the beginnings of my my artistic activity, mm-hmm. and though I didn't know it back then, mm-hmm. I was just having fun. Mm-hmm,
mm-hmm. That's mm-hmm. great. Yeah, and you're still having fun.
I'm still having fun. Yeah. Sometimes it's a little bit frustrating when things aren't going well in a particular direction, but it always stays interesting. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so you went off to college and you stayed in California.
I did, and graduated high school there. And when I was in high school, art was not something you took as an athlete, mm-hmm. you know. So it was sort of, you know, no, that was just for those kind of people. And but as I started in college and I originally pursued a major in language, in Spanish, the Spanish language, because my Portuguese background gave me an ease in hearing and speaking Spanish language. But in college, it became apparent to me that I was just an average student, except all of the elective courses I was taking to fill that in, taking, you know, a ceramic course here, a drawing course there, so forth. I was getting straight A's for some reason, and I was having a lot more fun. Mm-hmm. And so by the time I'd finished up about 3 years of the course of getting through that program, my advisor said, "What are you doing? You're taking all these art courses, and you should be finishing your major." And I went, "Oh, well, bye. And so I eventually completed 2 majors that way because the art thing just felt right.
And so you were sort of catapulted right into the 60s in college.
I was indeed, yes. In fact, Vietnam War protests, I was out there singing protest songs. And so by the time I developed my skills as a visual artist, a lot of those things were being incorporated into the things that I was constructing.
But the funk art scene that was happening out there.
The funk art scene came out of, interestingly, I'd started with ceramics. The funk art scene came out of some of the major names in ceramic sculptors out of UC Davis and the Berkeley area. And so I was starting to spent a lot of time in those areas. It was kind of the mecca for young artists, and actually spent some time with some of the big most influential ceramic artists, and they very much influenced where my work went with their political, social commentary, anti-war kind of things, and so it's kind of always been there.
It was a great time to be doing that kind of stuff.
Full of energy, just a lot of change going on.
Yeah. And so what were you making then when you were in college? Where were you going with your art?
Well, initially I was painting. I was a painting student, and I was doing some very more surrealist related sort of things, and a lot of juxtaposition of things, so that kind of trying to jar people with things that didn't belong together, that sort of thing. And then eventually my ceramic work kept growing and getting funkier. And when I finally left school, I didn't have that kind of big studio kind of facility to be able to continue some of these kind of things like ceramics. So I went back to my love, and that was gathering found materials and bringing that together. And I started doing things like scavenging in construction sites, backing up my truck, filling it with plywood. Construction at that time in the mid-'80s was just booming, but it was booming to such an extent they were throwing away a lot of stuff. So it was great for me. I just collected everything and started building big characters out of it.
Wow. Yeah. Oh, so big characters. So you had a little theater going on at that time as well, right?
Well, about 2 years after I graduated from college, I auditioned for and was hired in a children's theater company. It was a touring company in Central California, and of course, with my sculpture background and painting background, I was enlisted to do a lot of set building and prop building. And one of the things that I did was build the masks for a big production of the Anansi tales, the African storyteller, African spider storyteller. And so in researching the African culture and the African design, I was just knocked out by this powerful abstract forms that were used by African artists. And so I started playing with a lot of that, and eventually it became the movement of my work.
The African influence, which is a very strong influence as
well. And Picasso, as you might recall, Picasso at the time was still alive, and so shortly after I graduated, I spent time in Europe and at the Picasso Museum for about 3 days. And it changed my life. I mean, he's been following me around ever since. But
so you've got a fan club.
Oh yeah, one of my biggest fans. But anyway, his choice to take another cultural design and incorporate it in his contemporary work. Really just knocked out the whole art scene at the time.
The fact that you could do that.
The fact that you could do that and create a whole new look, a new form.
Right.
And so I took that as a lesson, a big lesson, and I'm still using it.
I'll bet. And you also had a little Bali influence, I think, at that time?
Well, I had a connection to a woman who spent a lot of time and did tours in Bali, and she was she really liked what I was doing. I was exhibiting in some of the universities around the area, San Francisco State University and the University of Pacific, and some of the major campuses. And she saw some of my shows and it said, you should look at the Balinese designs. And I was just stunned by the, cartoon dynamic kinds of forms that they were carving out of wood. And but the one thing that struck me most is it reminded me of my dad's old 50s Buicks. So I did a whole series, in fact, with the help of the Vermont Arts Council, a grant from the Vermont Arts Council. I did a big series of Balinese Buicks.
Wow. That came a little bit later.
Yeah.
But I can see how things are following through here.
Yeah.
You've got some threads that are going through.
And there's theater again.
Yeah,
Balinese,
right.
of course, that's the dance theater that they use the masks. So it continued on.
Well, I wonder, maybe we should bring up the mask.
Well, okay. Here's.
And this was circa.
This was in the mid 80s, and out of the theater experience. From my art experience, I was casting my own face and distorting it and doing sort of political masks at the time. And this one in particular has a casting of my face, and but then I incorporated found natural materials. The horns were given to me by a cattle rancher in Central California. Said, "Can you do anything with these?" And I said, "You bet." And it has the number of the animal burned right into the horns, and I called this one "We Mark the Beast."
Oh.
And I ended up using actual bullet cartridges for teeth because there's that relationship, our relationship with animals, hunting and so forth.
I think our viewers can get a pretty good idea of what this looks like. It's pretty powerful. You definitely don't want to mess with this guy at all, and it's got a lot of power.
I mean, it's my own face. To wake up to it sometimes is a little bit much, but
I know it must be a little bit disarming, and you're a branded man as well.
But this piece was selected as best of show for a big Northern California mask exhibition called Maskabition. The first year they had it, I shipped this up there, and it took best of show.
That's so great.
And it was selected by a French performing artist, mask artist. And he said the one thing he thought first when he first saw it was, "I wish I had made it." So it was quite a compliment.
That is quite a compliment. That's wonderful.
But it is wearable, by the way. But I won't put it on.
If Halloween comes around, you are all set.
I'm set.
You are really set. That's great. Well, thanks for bringing him along today, because it does feel like he has some presence. So at that time, you were involved in all these different art venues, the different kinds of art, doing the mask, doing the theater, the Maskabition, which is a great name. And have they continued that?
They still have. They went on for, I think they're still doing it as far as I know, but it's been a long time since I've submitted anything to the show.
Yeah. And I was wondering, because I think that most people in the area know you for your masks. You've done a lot of work with kids in schools, getting them to do masks. And I've always thought there's, a certain kind of magic about masks. I know whenever I've worn one, I've always been able to just conjure something very different,
You do. It's a transformation thing, and I share that with the kids all the time. That as soon as you put something on your face like that, you're transformed.
Right.
So it's a powerful thing. It really is, and you are free to, as many cultures use it, you're free to be whatever you want to be once you are transformed. And seriously used by other cultures.
Right.
We tend to think of it as a mask for fun, and it is in our use of it in Halloween.
Right.
But for some cultures, it's life or death.
Yeah, magic, religion, all kinds of things wrapped up in there.
That's right.
Yeah.
And this particular one, by the way, that I just showed you, was highly influenced by the Mexican culture. It's called Diablo masks, or the devil masks. When the Spaniards came in, the Catholic religion, and they converted the animistic cultures. Of course, they didn't give up a lot of their animistic beliefs. So they incorporated snakes and the devil into the same mask. So some of them are pretty spooky.
Yeah.
And they're for real.
And for kids, though, to take that into the classroom, I would think that kids would just not only have a blast doing it, but would also discover things that they might not normally do in either a regular art class or just in general.
Yeah.
And the making of it as well. Creating it.
Yes, I've had some really wonderful experiences with kids at risk who didn't seem to really function that well in the classroom, and were kind of pulled out. And I was hired to come in and work with them and make masks, and they just lit up.
Wow.
I mean, there's something about hands-on
Yeah.
materials and building things with your hands for a lot of kids who don't really relate to the whole
Wow, interesting.
curriculum thing.
Yeah.
That just knocks me out when I see them doing it.
Yeah, so it's kind of therapy as well.
It is in a sense, yeah.
We're still in California here, and I know that you talked a lot about community and being out in the community, the art, not only the art community, but the music community as well in California.
An art friend of mine at the time, in the mid '80s, was playing some wonderful music in the art studio and on a guitar, and I asked him what it was, and he said it was Celtic music. And so from about 6th grade on, I studied drums in school, in elementary and high school. So he said, well, there is an ethnic drum that it would be great if you could pick it up and join in. And so I ended up getting my hands on one of the Irish drums, the bodhrán. And we played together in coffee houses from that time on. And then eventually I wanted to study more to understand the melodies, and I found a teacher in San Francisco, and he would teach me whistle. At first he taught me the whistle to learn the melodies, and then eventually the wooden flute.
And you were playing music out in public
Yes.
as well. And then I think that I think you mentioned to me that there was kind of a crucial workshop that you went to.
Yes, there was a
some
very
point.
crucial workshop, as a matter of fact. Well, one thing was that I was making art, but I needed a break, and the music was a wonderful release. It's dance music, so it really puts
Right.
you in a nice frame of mind to pull you away from things that you're really struggling with. And my teacher asked me if I would go with him to a camp in Northern California, Mendocino, California, called Lark in the Morning Camp. And I said, yeah, sure, I'll go. He said, well, you can go there free if you clean bathrooms. And I said, I'll do it. Sounds good to me. And paying my dues. And so anyway, while I was there, about halfway through camp, I was taking a penny whistle class, and this redhead walked in and sat down next to me with a long red braid. And we were teamed up to learn tunes together because the teacher needed to have us doing that. And that person became my wife when I followed it out to Vermont.
And you were, but you did have a community of sorts out there, but
I did.
Yeah, but you
it
were doing a lot of traveling.
the interesting thing was that the community, music community I had, was very small. It was just a little group of friends, which is often typical, but we were all talking about the musicians out here in New England because this community was notorious as a hotbed for traditional music.
So this
and
community
dance.
Meaning the Brattleboro area
Yeah.
or southern Vermont?
Well, Brattleboro area, but certainly a lot of New England. The whole
Yeah.
New England dance scene.
Yep.
And the music that went along with the dance. So all of a sudden I was dropped right in the middle of it. So
You came for a visit and stayed.
Yep, came
Yeah.
for a visit and said, this is it.
Wow.
And
And this is
so-
mid-90s we're talking
this
about?
is 95 is when I first experienced, flew out, and then 96 I drove across Canada with my little truck and ended up down here in Westminster West.
In Westminster West. So you've been here since then?
Yes.
Yeah. Do you miss California at all?
Not a lot.
Not a lot, not a lot.
It's very hot and very flat.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some parts of it that are very beautiful, and particularly in Northern California.
Yeah.
I would commute to Humboldt County numerous times a year to join with a bunch of artists up there building big pedal power machines. And then
right, yeah.
There's a kinetic race that they have annually up there, and so we'd build these giant machines out of welded together bicycle parts, and then we would create a monster over the top of it, some kind of creature. One year it was a dragon. Another year it was a big armadillo, a big silver armadillo, things like that. And then we'd race them for 3 days across the countryside in Northern California.
So, but this segues also going back to your childhood and making.
It's so similar, you're right. Because when one of the things that I did, I took the rear end of an old car when I must have been about 10 or 11 years old, and took some old bicycle wheels and stuck them on the front of the drive shaft. And that was my go-kart. I couldn't turn or anything. You sort of pushed me down the driveway.
Just go straight, right?
But nothing was thrown out because the farmers would use these kind of things to put a flatbed on and use as a trailer. You just didn't throw that stuff away from a wrecked car.
And then you did the Buick Bolly.
Yeah, that's right. California is car country.
Yeah.
And so I must have gone through about 8 or 10 $100 cars when I was a teenager in California.
Using all the parts for one thing or another.
Oh, yeah. And they'd break down and I'd sell it for $50 and get another $100 car.
I don't think you're alone in that, in the American boy guy thing.
Probably not.
Probably
no.
not. But I think probably some of the things you created are pretty unusual. So, okay, so we're back, so we're in Vermont, and you landed here, and I wonder if you could talk a little bit about the support that you felt here when you got here.
It didn't take very long to realize that there was so much going on here compared to where I lived in a large rural community of almost 200,000 people. And there wasn't much the cultural scene there was the multiplex theater and bowling, basically. And here, from one shop to the next that I would visit, the shops were supporting the arts. I was meeting people right and left who's saying, yeah, bring it, let's have a look at your work, and as we talked about things, and was invited into a little gallery immediately here and started selling a few things. And so I did. I felt really this was a wonderful community for an artist to be, to kind of feel that community support.
And it's kind of interesting too, because the mid-90s here were really the beginning of the art scene in Brattleboro. I mean, that's when Wyndham Art Gallery,
that's right.
was the first time that something was actually really on Main Street that was showcasing the arts of artists.
That gallery. That
was a sweet little gallery. Yeah, it was really sweet. And there were and then it was Gallery Walk. Gallery Walk started happening right around that time.
That's right.
And now we have, I don't know how many, we must have at least 30 different venues. And I think it started with Wyndham Art Gallery and then went on from there, and so many people jumped on it. And you came at just the right time, and I'm sure that being here at that time and being able to be part of it just kind of underlined everything you'd been doing all these years.
Oh yeah, and one interesting little aside that I had shared with you was that as I said earlier, I was looking toward Humboldt County because it's a similar kind of thing. It's Eureka and Arcata are an isolated community built around Humboldt State University. So all these young people with all this energy are in this one little place, and it's too far away from the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area, to really take advantage of that very much. So they created their own fun up there. That's how that whole kinetic race got started. And so looking in a magazine, I think it was Outside Magazine or one of those types of magazines, I read an article about the Birkenstock-friendly towns of the U.S. What are the most Birkenstock-friendly towns? And they said Brattleboro and Arcata.
Wow.
The two, and so I knew nothing about Brattleboro at the time.
Did you know about Birkenstocks?
I knew about Birkenstocks. I was wearing Birkenstocks. To come out here and realize that to join my wife to be was right in the middle of one of the Birkenstock communities. It was pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, it is. It's a real nexus for an awful lot of things like that. Not only the arts, but as you say, music. And could you just talk a little bit about the Georgia School? Because that's a kind of an interesting little interview.
Yeah, that was, and I guess they must have picked up on the fact that I had submitted slides to the Arts Council, and they juried my slides and registered me as a juried artist. And so I started getting calls from different schools, workshops, and the art centers too. And then I got this call from this place called Georgia and Georgia's schools, and I thought, wow, that's a long way up. I got involved with them and walked into the school, and it was like an art gallery. The halls were just lined with all kinds of art. And the art teacher there and all of the art activity people were just incredible. And so they kept asking me back. They loved the whole mask thing.
That's great. And yeah, I think that you know, this idea of working with kids, again, is another thread that seems to be, you know, working through. I think that something that so many artists are always struggling with, I mean, there are very few artists that can do this for a living.
Right.
You know, can do this, you know, day and night job. And so that kind of balance, you know, creating kind of balance in your life where you've got your creativity, the energy of your creativity, as well as some kind of stability that's putting food on the table, and connection, you know, connection with either other artists or with the community. And looking at that, and also the fact, which, you know, I'm going to reveal to everyone in the audience, is that you are also a librarian at the Putney Library.
I am indeed a mild-mannered librarian by day, and who knows what by evening and weekend. But that was
good
that
thing
was,
you've got Clark Kent glasses.
Yeah, I have some big. I have some more horn
Yeah.
rim glasses
Yeah.
I wear at the library. No, I worked for 15 years for a university in the library system there, and as their coordinator for interlibrary loans. And I'd go from a 40-hour week to a studio that I was renting, a commercial space up above a department store. And so, you know, I didn't see very many people for sometimes in periods of time when I'm just from work to studio. And so it took its toll on my circle of friends, for sure. But that was the only way I could do art and also be able to afford.
Right. And you've been able to do this your whole life. I mean, that's amazing. You know, to be able to have those things in place, you know, where you've got a grounding force, you've got a place and ability to do your creativity, and you obviously are spending nothing on materials, right?
Well, almost nothing. I have to buy big jugs of glue anyway to hold things together.
Right. And you've got a dialogue going, you know, with other artists in the area and musicians, you know. It's pretty fabulous.
They're here all over the place. They're kind of tucked into the woods, but there's so many of them.
Well, there's a lot of woods here to
There's
get
a lot of
tucked
woods
into.
too.
Yeah,
hiding behind trees and stuff. Yeah.
And also, of course, we've got to mention the fact that you've got a show going on right now at the River Gallery School, downstairs street level at the River Gallery School, which will be going on through September.
Yes. And it's a wonderful little space.
Yes, it is.
It's storefront. It's lit all the time. You can walk by any time of the day and have a peek in there. It gets more spooky by night, but I've been looking forward to this. I mean, it was booked ahead for a year, so I was looking forward to this quite some time and working toward it. And the folks at River Gallery School are great.
Yeah,
they've just been really helpful and really supportive. And
it's a very nice space, and you're also going to be there weekly.
I will be there. I've put a sign in the window that the large sculpture in the window is a work in progress. So I will be in the window like a window dresser for Tuesdays from 4 to 6.
Great.
So that's I may be in there odd other times, but messing around with stuff. But those specifically are set aside for anyone who'd like to come by and look at the work, look at the materials, talk about how they're built, the pieces are built. I love that. I mean, that's the need for teaching, you know, wanting to be a teacher as well, working with, especially with kids. I loved sharing any kinds of methods, techniques, materials that will get somebody else excited about it too.
I think we should bring this up. And I think one of the things that's really interesting about these pieces is you really don't know what the material is. You know, you look at it really closely, and we know because you've advertised it as such that you're working mainly with cardboard.
Yes.
You know, so most of everything in that show is cardboard.
Yes. There are other materials incorporated. There are lots of found materials incorporated, sand and bamboo and things of this nature, but they're essentially used to accent the whole cardboard construction. Yeah,
this piece is really pretty amazing.
This one was, it sort of came to me in a flash that we, generally all of us have a zipper that we wear around most of the day. And another I wanted to try to find some found material that everyone could relate to, and So I to go to the thrift store and found a jacket with a zipper
And some fur.
and so the thing is constructed of cardboard, and the form that I decided to use is essentially mimicking the action of a zipper up and down. And so that I love having something playful in the pieces. It isn't all dark.
Right.
I want some people to be drawn in with some whimsical aspect of it as
Yep.
well. So in this case, you're kind of looking into a big zipper, into a small zipper, which is a contemporary kind of object. And then yet it's based on a very old African shield design. So I like playing back and forth.
Yep.
I even imply African
Yes.
with a little bit of
Yes.
of pseudo fur along the edges.
Yeah.
And so
Well,
forth.
I can even see the Bali influence, with the shape.
Yeah.
That you've got going on there.
Well, and there again, as you say, that bringing in another culture like that, studying all these cultures, eventually it all gets mixed together, and you don't even think about where it's
Right,
coming from
right.
anymore. But things will pop in and out
Yes.
of work that you don't exactly remember where you got it, but
Right.
but it's there.
It's in there.
all
It's in there.
absorbed from looking at a lot of other cultures.
Yep, and the design symbolism, and execution, the whole thing comes from, this could be from many different cultures.
Yeah, that's right.
And
That's right.
it's beautiful, and the whole thing. Also, the thing that's great, this thing is so light, but it's also very tactile.
Yes.
You've got a lot of different things going on. Yeah,
So-
I love that piece.
Yeah, what you're seeing is these forms. I got really hooked on claws and teeth, claws
Yeah,
and fang
yeah.
kind of things in a lot of cultures. So they reuse the actual materials, as with the horns from the
Yes,
bull.
right.
So I like mimicking that form. It's always been a favorite form.
Yep.
In this case, I've constructed them out of these. This is boxboard material, like you get cracker boxes or cereal boxes, that sort of thing, cut and shaped and built out in 3 dimensions.
Yeah.
And then all cardboard on the back, and then the skin on the outside. And I use that term when I'm working with kids that they're going to put a skin over
cool.
the animal. The skin is actually 7th generation brown paper towel. It's recycled, and
That sounds really old. 7th generation
Yeah.
paper towel. Yeah. That's
Anyway.
great. Yeah, it's such a great piece. And you're right. One of the things, even this piece, your mask, which is scary in a lot of ways, it still has some humor in it. There's always reprieve.
Yeah.
Nothing gets too dark. I love that.
many of the cultures that I have been studying in the past use the masks often as a social tool to keep people in line, to that sort of thing, and often to frighten children, with them to keep them from not messing around too much.
Excellent idea. We could all
But
use
that's
that.
all like cartoon
Right,
activity
right.
in the same vein. So,
Yeah, it is. It's always existed. It's
so
wonderful.
I
to see
love that balance
Yeah.
of something that's a little scary, but at the same time funny.
Right. That's great. Well, Art, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much. And just to let people know again, stop by and see Art on Tuesdays down at River Gallery downstairs, street level. And it was fun. It's really fun.
It's always fun.
It's always fun. So here we are with Art Costa, and thanks for tuning in. We'd love to hear from you. If you have any ideas or any feedback that you'd like to give us, you can find us on Facebook. You can go to our website. You could even call us on the telephone if you want to. And we will see you next time. Thanks so much for coming in and joining us.